All right. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Brian from Izzet League EDH, and we are back with some more Commander Legends spoilers for what is it? I think day 4. Day 4. So, spoiler alert for the spoilers. There's a couple nutty cards in this set. Some which probably have heard about by now by the time of me releasing this video. So again, just like the last video, I kind of like the length of the 30-minute videos ish if possible. Without further ado though, we'll just get started right into the cards. So first up, we're gonna have the multicolored cards. First one being Belb, Corrupted Observer, which is a black green zombie elf legendary creature. Has 2 power, 2 toughness. It's only 2 mana. It says at the beginning of each player's post-combat main phase, that player adds 2 colorless mana for each of your opponents who lost life this turn. This is actually pretty good in my opinion. Black has a lot of cards that say things like each opponent loses 1 life, you gain 1 life, for example. Okay, just simple stuff like that. So an effect like this, on a 2-drop, mind you, it can easily give you like 6 colorless mana on your second main phase. In which case, you can easily just play some like 6, 7, 8 drop from your hand if you want. Like, that's kind of nuts in my opinion. I wouldn't be surprised, to be honest, if someone makes some sort of like Eldrazi deck out of this. I could easily see it happen. It's Golgari for all. I mean, Jesus. Okay, you have Golgari, so you can resurrect it from your graveyard. In the worst case, that you can't hard cast it. You can cheat out of your grave already. So not only can you hard cast on the early turns, you can then resurrect your Eldrazi, and it's just. It's ridiculous. I do think it's cool that it's a zombie elf. You don't really. I think that's the first time I've ever seen that combination. But there are Golgari elf creatures as well, in case somebody does want to go with an elf tribal deck. But I don't know. I think it's better to take advantage of all that mana you're gaining if possible. Other than that, though, next card we have Kolfenor, the Last You. This is a Bant card, a Bant commander. It's a Treefolk Shaman. Costs 6 mana, so 3 generic, 1 white, 1 black, 1 green, so Bant colors. It's a 3 power, 7 toughness, pretty beefy. Has vigilance and reach. And says whenever Kolfenor, the Last You, or another creature you control dies, return up to 1 other target creature card with lesser toughness from your graveyard to your hand. This is very interesting. It's kind of like a Bant version of like a toughness matter decks, wall decks type of thing, where you would hopefully have cards that let your creatures do damage based on their toughness rather than their power, sort of thing. There are cards in Bant color, or not Bant. I already forgot the name of this color combination. It sucks, but you know, there are cards in this colors that can do that sort of thing. So it is possible. Pretty cool take on it. Next up, that's it for the multicolored cards. There's not a whole lot of multicolors today. We have, of course, the crown jewel of the spoilers for this day, Jeweled Lotus. I already have a episode up talking about my viewpoints about Jeweled Lotus, how realistically, and I'll leave a little, hopefully I remember, I'll put a tag up in the corner up here, in case you want to go check it out. Maybe I'll leave a link in the description below as well. But overall, I don't think Jeweled Lotus, well, let me say what it does first, okay? It's a 0-drop artifact, colorless artifact. You can tap it and sacrifice Jeweled Lotus, add 3 mana of any 1 color, spend this mana only to cast your commander. Okay, so realistically, it's just a big dumb mana rock that you can only use for your commander or commanders if you have partner, which is likely with all these partner commanders coming out this set. Just to kind of give a brief summary, I'm not going to go full into it. I recommend watching my video if possible, but realistically, this isn't as good as you might expect it to be. Don't get caught up in all the hype that just simply because it has Lotus in its name and it kind of acts like Lotus is not nearly as good as the real Black Lotus. Okay, just keep that in mind. The Black Lotus can be used for that mana that Black Lotus creates can be used on any card you cast, whereas Jewel Lotus only works on your commander. So realistically, in my opinion, it's only really good for 1 and 2 color commanders that are around 4 mana, 4 or 5 mana, or actually, yeah, just dual color commanders in general, 1 or 2 color commanders. I find it to be the most useful though for the really big drop commanders, such as like 6 drop or higher commanders, simply because of the fact that if they die once, you have to pay 8 mana or higher for them the next time. And chances are, because of the fact that games typically end on like anywhere from turn 7 to 9 these days in commander games, chances are you might not even get to the point where you can even cast it again. So Jewel Lotus really helps you be able to recast your higher CMC commanders more often, at least 2 or 3 times if possible. So that's my biggest takeaway from it. In terms of financial value, I'm really expecting this to drop down anywhere from like the $20-$30 range, maybe 40 at most. But it's nowhere near as good as, say, like a Mana Crypt. Heck, even in a lot of situations, Soul Ring is better than this. So anyways, that's it from my hot take on Jeweled Lotus. Really good card, though. It's still a really good card. Don't get me wrong. It's just not as good as many people are hyping it up to be. All right. So the next card, we're going to be going on to the green cards for today. Oh, I just realized I didn't change the labels here real quick. There we go. Green cards for today. We have Hunter's Insight. This is an uncommon. It's a 3-drop mono green instant. Costs 2 generic and a green. It says choose target creature you control. Whenever that creature deals combat damage to a player or a planeswalker this turn, draw that many cards. This is really good. There's not a whole lot of cards. I don't even think there are any cards that are like this. Most green cards that tend to like draw cards are either like when a creature enters the battlefield, or if you sack the creature, draw that many cards equal to his power type of thing. Those are, or whenever you cast a creature, you draw a card. Those are typically the typical type of green card draw that you'll usually see. So this is one of those rare instances where you can actually draw cards just from doing combat. I kind of think, I still think that the cards that just draw based on power is better, just because of the fact that you don't have to rely on combat. So in the case that an opponent uses a combat trick or something and ends up making this mute. But I don't know. It's good. It's good. It's just, I don't know. I feel like there's potentially just better ways to go about doing what this is trying to do. Next up, we have Sweet Gum Recluse. This is a 6-drop mono green creature. Costs 4 generic and 2 green. It's a 0/3 spider creature. It has flash. It has a lot of keywords. It has flash, has cascade, and it has reach. And its ability says when Sweet Gum Recluse enters the battlefield, put 3 1/1 counters on each of any number of target creatures that entered the battlefield this turn. So this is actually kind of a nutty card, to be honest. You're already in green, so you're probably going to be ramping up pretty quickly, at least in the early turns. So you could easily play a 6-drop at maybe like turn 4 or 5 potentially. You play other creatures. You flash this guy in. When you flash it in, you cascade first. Okay. Hopefully you cascade into a creature, hits the field. Then this guy hits the field, and you can put 3 +1/+1 counters on itself and other creatures that hit the field. So it's actually not too bad. And this is probably going to see the most use, in my opinion, for decks that really like using a ton of mana. Just because of the fact that you would ideally want to have multiple, maybe smaller creatures hit the field that same turn and then play this card. So you're using 6 mana on top of whatever amount of mana to play those other smaller creatures. So that's what I'm saying. In my head, you're probably going to be using this, or it would ideally want to be used in a deck that already likes making tons of mana and doesn't mind that, like the fact that you need a lot of mana, basically. So pretty cool card. It's only really usable in certain types of decks, but in those decks, I feel like it can be pretty powerful. Next up, we have the white cards for today, starting with Archon of Coronation. It's a mono white creature, 6 mana, 6 CMC, costs 4 generic and 2 white. As creature type is Archon, and has 5 power, 5 toughness. It has flying, and it says when Archon of Coronation enters the battlefield, you become the Monarch. I love me some Monarch. It also says as long as you're the Monarch, damage doesn't cause you to lose life. This is actually pretty cool. Like I'm honestly loving this, like these type of cards that introduce the monarchy but let you gain a benefit for being the monarch. I am absolutely in love with these type of cards. I think they're really good, considering the fact that most monarch cards just let you become the monarch and don't really give you some sort of benefit for being the monarch. We see some examples of these, like my favorite being Regal Behemoth, which lets you get double mana as long as you're the monarch. So it gives you instant value for being the monarch rather than waiting for an upkeep trigger while you're the monarch, kind of compared to some of the cycle that's currently happening right now with those 4-drop enchantments. But still a pretty cool effect. I'm actually kind of liking this. I'm not really too sure where I would want to put this in a deck, aside from maybe a combat-oriented deck, just because of the fact that with this on the field, you are at least more open to swinging out fully if you wanted to, because then at the very least, if they decide to attack back, it's not going to matter because the attack won't actually, the attack damage won't make you actually lose life. Like you'll still be the same life total. So not a bad card. I feel like it's going to take a little testing, but my first thought is it would go in some sort of creature deck, combat based deck. All right, next white card, we have Court of Grace. This is part of the Monarch's cycle that I was just mentioning for the enchantment. We saw the blue one earlier yesterday, or in the last video. For blue, they had Mill. Now for white, it is Court of Grace. It's a 4-drop white enchantment for 2 generic and 2 white. It says when Court of Grace enters the battlefield, you become the Monarch. At the beginning of your upkeep, create a 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying. If you're the Monarch, create a 4/4 white angel creature token with flying instead. So again, it follows the same thing, that at the very base, it gives you a benefit for having it on the field. But if you also happen to still be the Monarch by the time it comes back to your upkeep, after you played it the previous turn, you get a huge upside to help kind of make sure that you're still the Monarch. So far, this one's probably one of the better ones so far between the blue one and the white one right here, just because of the fact that you're more likely to keep the monarchy if you get the 4/4 angel, whereas the blue one just lets you mill 10 on the opponent. Really only really useful for mill decks, or potentially any decks that want to mill themselves, maybe like a black deck or something. But pretty good card, to be honest. It gives mono white card draw, and it gives mono white some tokens to defend with. So I'm liking it already. This is very potentially going to be going in my Heliod deck. Next up, we have First Response. I wasn't sure if this was a reprint or not, but I was like, why not? We'll put it up here just because it looks like it's new. I don't recognize something like this. It's a 4-drop white enchantment, uncommon. Costs 3 generic mana and 1 white. It says at the beginning of each upkeep, if you lost life this last turn, create a 1/1 white soldier creature token. Now, I do want to point out that this card does say at the beginning of each upkeep, not your upkeep, but each upkeep. So your opponent's turns too, if you happen to lose life on the previous person's turn, you get a 1/1 token. That could actually be better than you might think. I don't know what exactly type of cards that would go along with this, but I'm pretty sure there are cards out there that you could probably finagle away to have you lose life, maybe like lose 1 life every single turn on every player's turn, so that way you can constantly get these triggers. Okay, again, don't really know what type of deck this would go in, but I find it interesting, and I'm pretty sure there's a home for it somewhere. Next up, we have Keller's Sunmane Familiar. This is a legendary creature horse. Costs 2 mana, 1 generic, and a white. Has 1 power, 1 toughness. Has partner, and says whenever a commander you control attacks, put a 1/1 counter on it. Honestly, it's not too bad for being a 2-drop. It's pretty good, to be honest. If you partner with the right type of partner commander, this can actually be pretty strong. I have a feeling that this could be pretty strong depending on what the other partner is. So for example, if you happen to partner this up with some sort of already kind of beefy higher drop partner commander that can easily more oriented towards combat, just slap this on the field turn 2, play the other commander, turn 4 or 5 or something, and then when it attacks, it gets a 1/1 counter. It's kind of beefy. People probably won't want to block, and just gets some nice chunky damage in there. So I'm kind of liking it. I kind of don't want to know what type of partners are going to be paired with it. Next up, we have Olivia, Oathsworn Sentinel. This is also a 2-drop mono white creature, legendary creature, human knight, for 1 generic and a white. Has 2 power, 2 toughness. Has 2 activated abilities. The first activated ability says you can pay 1 generic and a white, choose another target creature. Its controller may exile it with an Aegis counter on it. The third activated ability says you can pay 2 generic and a white and tap Olivia, Oathsworn Sentinel. Return all exiled cards with Aegis counters on them to the battlefield under their owner's control. And it has partner. So this is actually kind of interesting. It's different. As far as I'm aware, there's not really much things that are kind of like this. The fact that, just to note, the fact that when you exile another creature, and it is a May trigger, I should add too. So you can't just go and target an opponent's creature and automatically exile it. It says the controller may exile it. So even if you target another creature with it, they can just choose not to exile it. So ideally, you're probably going to be using this on mostly just your own creatures for the most part. And you can't necessarily abuse this effect either because it only has an Aegis. It only brings back stuff with Aegis counters on it. If it didn't say that Aegis counters part, it would probably be busted because then you can exile a bunch of other cards in your deck, pay the 3-drop. Or play the 3-cost ability and get all your exiled cards back, not just the ones that would have been from his own ability. So that's kind of why the Aegis counters are there, just to kind of make sure he's not broken with other stuff that exile your exile cards. So pretty cool commander. Considering he's a 2-drop, I feel like he could be very viable. And he has partners, so you can easily throw in at least 2 other colors at most with him. So I'm not sure what I would want to do with him, but I do see him having potential, some sort of combo potential. At the very worst, he can help protect important creatures that you want to keep around. So pretty interesting. Other than that, next up we have Slash the Ranks. I'm actually kind of interested in this one just because of the fact that as much as I love board wipes, I do like more one-sided board wipes, if that makes sense. It's not a complete one-sided board wipe, but at least, well, I'll read the card real quick. Slash the Ranks is a 5-drop mono white sorcery, costs 3 generic and 2 white. It says destroy all creatures and planeswalkers except for commanders. Now, my biggest thing here is not only is the fact that it destroys creatures, obviously, but it's the fact that it destroys creatures and planeswalkers. As far as I'm aware, most board wipes don't help take care of both creatures and planeswalkers. Usually it's one or the other. So like Wrath of God, for example, only destroys all creatures. There's only a handful of board wipes off the top of my head that actually deal with both. An obvious one for blue would be like Cyclonic Rift, because that hits everything except lands. Yeah, and then obviously there are some red cards that came out within these last few years that hit creatures and planeswalkers as well, such as Wrath of the Gods or Hour of Devastation and whatnot. So I really like cards like that have just more versatility. You keep your commander, which is nice. It lets the opponents hit their commander too, but hopefully by playing this card, you probably would have dealt with their commander first, or already have some sort of backup plan to deal with their commander, maybe a turn or like just shortly after playing this card. So I like this card. I feel like it's going to have some use. It's just more so of whether or not you want to play this card compared to other types of board wipes. So it's interesting for to say the least. Next up, we have some blue cards. I keep forgetting to change these text reminders. Blue cards. We got Elegith Crossroads Agor. It is a mono blue legendary creature Sphinx for 6 mana. Costs 4 generic and 2 blue. has 5 power, 6 toughness, has flying, and it says if you would scry a number of cards, draw that many cards instead. And it has partner. This is probably going to be one of the more broken commanders in blue by far. No questions asked, okay? Just something as simple, what is it, Ponder or something like that? I'll put the correct card up on the side here. But whatever that card is, that card that lets you scry to and then draw a card for 1 blue mana, that card alone, with Elgith on the field, automatically becomes an Ancestral Recall, which is straight up just tells you draw 3 cards at that point for 1 blue mana. That's insane. That's legitimately insane. And blue has a ton of cards that let you scry. So I feel like this is going to be a massively powerful commander. And it has partner, which I feel like is what makes it even more disgusting, is that you could potentially make it like a Jeskai deck or something, or a Teamer deck. Decks that already have a good chunky amount, especially Jeskai, would already have a good chunky amount of scrying involved. Control power, more so on the controls on the Jeskai side than the Teamer side or whatnot. I really like this card. I feel like this is a very strong card. How often you'll get this out though, because it is a 6-drop, is to be seen. If you're playing Teamer, probably won't be as hard. If you're not though, playing with that green, could be a little shaky, but I really like this card. I might mess around with it, to be honest, for a little bit. Next blue card, we have Laboratory Savant. Servant, my bad. It is a zombie horror creature. Costs 4 mana, 3 generic and a blue. Has 3 power, 4 toughness. It says at the beginning of each end step, if you cast a spell from a graveyard this turn, or activate an ability of a card in a graveyard this turn, draw a card. I'm not a big fan of this, to be honest. Just because of the fact that typically casting spells from graveyards or activating abilities in graveyards don't happen that often. It doesn't happen that often. Even for decks that are completely dedicated to that sort of thing, such as like what was that? There was like one commander precon that was completely dedicated to flashback. It was like a Jeskai deck that was completely dedicated to flashback effects. Okay, even decks like those, you would typically only end up flashbacking maybe like anywhere from 2 to 4 times the entire game. So in my opinion, this is actually really not a very good card. The only decks I would even consider putting this in are like zombie type decks, or black decks that have active abilities that were like you trigger them to return them back to your hand or something, or they automatically come back to the field by some effect. Okay, those would be the only cards I might consider putting them in, and it only depends on whether or not there are enough effects in that deck or enough key cards in that deck to warrant to actually justify putting that in it. So realistically, for the grand scheme of things, not a very good card unless you can somehow find a specific deck to put it in. Next up, we have the red cards for today. We're pretty much blazing through this today. We don't have a whole lot left, to be honest. Okay. First up, we have Drago the Shipwrecker. This guy's a doozy, okay? He has a 7-drop legendary creature giant pirate. He has 7 power, 5 toughness. He costs 6 generic mana and 1 red mana. He has partner and trample, and says as an additional cost to cast this spell, you may sacrifice any number of artifacts and or creatures. This spell costs 2 mana less to cast for each permanent sacrifice this way, and 2 mana less to cast for each other artifact and or creature you've sacrificed this turn. So it's a deck, or at least it's a partner commander that cares about sacrificing stuff. So very interesting. I think this is probably going to be better in decks in like some sort of like Rakdos aristocrat-y type build, just because they're already sacking things already in aristocrats deck. So this just kind of naturally fits into that shoe where like you're already kind of doing what you want to do anyways, and just doing that rewards you by being able to play a 7-drop commander for 1 mana essentially, and that's a 7/5 creature with trample. You get a big dude for 1 mana. Pretty cool. And it was worth noting too that his ability does affect his commander attacks too. So even if he dies a couple times, if you got the ball rolling, if you got the engine going in your Rakdos, or at least Rakdos colors aristocrat deck, you're set. You're solid. Heck, you can make this a Mardu deck, a Mardu aristocrats deck. Very doable. And this guy is just kind of chilling. It's just a big dude that keeps coming after you. I could easily see this being a very low-key, under-the-radar type commander for sure. Pretty cool card. Next up, we have Jeska's Will. I'm actually kind of excited for this card for myself, for my own type of decks. This is a 3-drop mono red sorcery, costs 2 generic and a red. Says it's following the same cycle of the other cards that do the same sort of thing, where if you control a commander, you can use both modes. So it says choose one, choose a mode. If you control a commander as you cast a spell, you may choose both modes. First mode says add 1 red mana for each card in target opponent's hand. You know me. I love wheels, okay? So it's like, hey, this is Mario up my alley. Second mode says, exile the top 3 cards of your library. You may play them this turn, okay? Now, for me personally, I'm primarily going to be using this almost exclusively for that first mode. So I can almost care less whether or not my commander is on the field for me to use both abilities. The only time I will probably ever care about that second ability is if I put this in my mono red deck, just because mono red doesn't have the greatest amount of actual pure card draw. Red's form of card draw these days tend to be in the form of exiling the top card and playing it, such as what is on this card, for example. So I'm actually really excited for this. Heck, as long as at least one opponent has 4 cards in their hand, you are already getting value off this card from that first mode, in my opinion. So I'm pretty excited about this. And that's not even considering any effects or any decks that already like to draw tons of cards, so you just get a bajillion mana just for doing that. Or if you're playing a wheel deck like me, you force your opponent to give them cards, and then you get a ton of mana, okay? So I'm excited for this. Next up, we have Jeska herself, Thrice Reborn. Yeah, Thrice Reborn. This is a very strong commander. I'm just going to say that. She's a 3-drop mono red Planeswalker commander. She can be played as your commander, and she has partner, Broken. She has a passive ability. So she has 3 abilities in total. The first one's a passive ability. This one says, Jeska Thrice Reborn enters the battlefield with a loyalty counter on it for each time you've cast a commander from the command zone this game. Her first activated ability for 0 counters says choose target creature. Until your next turn, if that creature would deal combat damage to one of your opponents, it deals triple that damage to that player instead. Jesus Christ. I'm gonna talk about something regarding that in a second. Her second ability, her ultimate, I guess, is -X. Jeska Thrice Reborn deals X damage to each of up to 3 targets. So honestly, this is a busted, absolutely busted partner commander, okay? Personally, myself, I'm already planning to make a Jeska deck using Jeska as my red portion of my colors for my partner commander, and then have Ishai, Ojutai something as my second partner commander. Ishai has blue-white, okay? So I get Jeska colors in total, okay? It's going to be absolutely busted just because of the fact that Ishai alone already gets bigger for my opponents just casting spells. So easily, in just a single turn rotation of Ishai being out, Ishai could already become like a 6/6 or a 7/7. Easily. Easily. Come back to my turn. I 0 Jeska on my Ishai, and I could practically one-shot somebody with commander damage with Ishai. So it's like just my commanders alone, it's like a one-shot combo. Like that's just dirty to me. And that's not considering all the other types of combos you could do with Jeska as well, considering that she has partner. Like, she's gross. She's absolutely gross. The -X is kind of lackluster in my opinion. But I mean, hell, whatever. Okay, the zero is already kind of broken alone. So I do want to quickly point out though that for her passive, if you choose to put Jessica in your 99 of your deck and not use it as a commander herself, do keep in mind that if you haven't cast your commander at all during the course of the game yet, by the time you cast her, she'll come in with 0 loyalty and immediately die. You won't be able to use her ability. So just keep that in mind in regards to Jessica. All right, next up, we have Rogra, son of Roga. I don't know, man. This one is probably one of the most more unique ones, in my opinion. He has a 0-drop legendary creature kobold warrior. He has 0 power, 1 toughness. He has partner, and he says first strike. He has 3 keywords: first strike, menace, and trample. And that is it. He has no abilities. It's just keyword abilities. He just has first strike, menace, trample, and partner. That's it. And he's a 0-drop with 0 power and 1 toughness. Now, this is just me personally, but I already know there's going to be people out here who are going to try to find some sort of way to make Rogra over here absolutely nuts. You already know. You already know it's going to happen. You already know it's going to happen. They're going to try and make him as beefy as possible. Maybe even turn him into a pseudo Voltron deck for all I know. But I feel like just because of the fact he's so unique and so different, people are probably going to gravitate to him. Probably not for very long, though, in my opinion. But at least at first, people might gravitate to him. So, next card. We have Togo, Goblin Weaponsmith. This is probably one of the more like fun, janky cards, in my opinion, from this set. It is a 3-drop mono red legendary creature, Goblin Artificer. Costs 2 generic and a red. Has 2 power, 2 toughness. Has partner, and says whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, create a colorless equipment artifact token named Rock, with the ability equipped creature has pay 1 and tap it. Sacrifice Rock. This creature deals 2 damage to any target, and the equip cost is 1 mana. So it's just a jank card. That's all it is. You literally, whenever you play a land, you get a rock equipment that you can then pay mana to chuck it at something else for 2 damage. It's just such a dirtily. It's a fun card. That's what it is. It's not strong by any means, but it's just fun. Next up, we have Wheel of Misfortune. So clearly, they're going on with this whole kind of making iterations of some of the reserve list cards. Wheel of Misfortune, which is kind of fun. It's another fun card. It's a 3-drop mono red sorcery. Costs 2 generic and a red. And it's basically its own take on Wheel of Fortune. It says each player secretly chooses a number from 0 or greater. Then all players reveal those numbers simultaneously and determine the highest and lowest numbers revealed this way. Wheel of Fortune deals damage equal to the highest number to each player who chose that number. Each player who didn't choose the lowest number discards their hand, then draws 7 cards. So, just to kind of reiterate and explain a little bit in case that confused you, everyone chooses a number secretly, okay? Whoever chose the highest number takes that much damage. Whoever chose the lowest number, nothing happens to them. And then everybody else in between discards their hand and draws 7 cards, okay? So, realistically, this is a gamble. This entire card is a gamble, okay? If you're trying to get a new hand, that's probably going to be the hardest, okay? Because of the fact that now, realistically, things come down to 3 situations, okay? There's going to be, if people, it's going to depend on what they decide to do for the rulings for this type of card. Just because of the fact that I don't really know what happens if everybody gets the same number. Because then they're all the lowest, but they're all the highest at the same time. So I don't know what would take precedence, whether or not everyone would take damage or whether or not nothing would happen with everyone. That's the big takeaway here. So I kind of have to wait for the rulings to come out for this card first to really know how useful this card is. Because I feel like, assuming that nobody takes damage if everyone picks the same number, or at least all your opponents pick the same number, it's so like, for example, if all your opponents pick 0, it's gonna really screw you over, because then nothing happens to them. If you're trying to wheel, you'll pick it like literally any number higher than that, and anything than 0, and you're gonna take damage. So it's just you're paying 3 mana to damage yourself. So I kind of have to see the rulings for this. I don't feel like it's very good though, just because of the fact that any smart player, depending on how the rulings work out, would realize what happens, and this card kind of just becomes a dead card. So, all right, that is it for today, guys. In terms of today's spoilers, it went by pretty quick, to be honest. Go ahead and let me know what your thoughts are about today's spoilers in the comment section down below. Were there any combos or card combinations that I didn't realize upon going over today's spoilers? If so, go ahead and let me know. I would love to go ahead and take a look at it. I'm always vibing for these types of strategies and whatnot. So other than that, if you enjoyed the video though, please leave a like, subscribe, and hit that bell button. It's the best way I know when I upload more videos such as this one. My name is Brian from Izzet League EDH, and I will see you guys in the next spoilers video. Peace, y'all.